Welcome to our newest episode of the Lebanese Physicians Podcast. And today, actually, we will be talking to the wife of a Lebanese physician, discussing her move to the United States and living as an immigrant in the US. We're going to title our podcast, She Lived in Sandwich, or in French, Elle habitait à Sandwich. Right, Pauline? I think so. And reflections of an immigrant to the United States. And our guest today is Pauline Mouhanna Karroum, who will be discussing this with us. So, Pauline, can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you ended up in the United States?
Yes. Hi, Khalil. Thank you so much for having me. Or should I say Dr. Khalil? Professor Khalil. Okay, actually, I started my life in the United States in 2011 when I came with my husband, who was going to do his residency in neurology in Springfield, Illinois. And I always knew that I liked to write, and writing is always something that I love to do most of my time. So in 2012, I started writing a novel related to not really my own experience, but more about the experience of an immigrant, a woman who decided to marry someone who's also Lebanese and move to the United States with her. Now, my main character name is Therese. She's not me. I'm not really Therese, but she's any woman who moves to the United States and comes without really knowing how her new life will be in a country where she had never actually lived really.
Yes, especially when Therese moves to Sandwich, Illinois.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And Sandwich, Illinois actually is a city that exists. It's almost an hour from Chicago. It's not really in Chicago, so that means it's a very rural place. Therese was living in Lebanon, in Beirut. It was a Beirut that is very different from maybe the Beirut that we know now. So she was very happy. She didn't really know how is her life going to be in the United States. And I think that in Sandwich, she had a lot of trouble to adapt and to adjust to her new life.
I guess Therese, the character, reflects your thoughts and what happened when you moved over to the US, right?
Yes, it is related to my thought because I felt like the fact to really marry someone that you love, but also like the effort to start your life somewhere where you really don't know anyone, where it's very different from what you're used to, and where really like the language also was missing. I wasn't really fluent in English. French was my first and the work language, so it was very difficult, and it was a rural place where you can't really start your career. You have to start all over again. So that is not really my story, but it reminded me of the difficulties that we can end up having when we are not in our own country, or where we're not in a place where we can be comfortable.
I think your novel, goes well with a lot of what immigrants to the United States, or to other countries even for that matter, go through. And I think it goes well with what's happening right now with the mass immigration that's happening from Lebanon. Part of it is forced. And so can you tell us, what were the difficulties that Therese faced when she moved over there?
Yes.
And did she overcome them, or did she not overcome them? And if she did overcome them, how did she do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when you move somewhere else, even if we are never really ready to start our life somewhere, even if we're successful, even if we build our career, we always end up like missing our own country. So I feel that one of the main important thing is that Therese felt that it wasn't her home. She was far away from her country. She was feeling it was difficult for her to have a new space and to feel that she is comfortable where she is. So I wanted to show and demonstrate the difficulties that you may have, even if you are not you're better in a maybe economical place, but you're not better emotionally and culturally. Like you feel, okay, I'm maybe stable. I'm really, it's better for me. I'm probably more wealthy than where I was before, but in the same time, I'm not happier. And this is something that we all men sometimes feel, because happiness is related to too many things. And I feel that immigrants sometimes forget about the main thing, which is what makes us happy is to really contain and maintain our relation to our country. So I feel that for Therese, what ended up helping her is really to try to do her best to keep with her country, to keep the relation going on, and try to build something between the United States and.
Can you give us an example of some of the difficulties that Therese went through when she moved there?
Yes, one of the things that I can think of is, for example, her son's birthday. So she is in a different country. She wants to do his first year. She's very happy. She has her first. In her case, it was a son, and she wants to celebrate his 1-year-old. And the way she sees the birthday is very different from the birthday that is overseas. Like, like in Lebanon, when we were younger, when we celebrate birthday, the whole family is together. We are all ages are together. We feel that we are really celebrating something, all of us. And in the United States, it's really something where you end up like doing a birthday for only 2 hours. It's very practical, and there is not a lot of emotional or like relations that are the same than when we celebrate with family and people that you grow up with. So Therese, for instance, like the day of her son's birthday is very difficult. That reminded her of how much she's lonely when she is not home, and how much she misses her past, and how much is now her past is really the past. It's not now
So yeah, this goes for birthdays, for holidays like Christmas, Thanksgiving.
Exactly. Yeah, it goes for any celebration where we really start to feel lonely, because I mean, even if we have friends here, we're happy, but the friends never replace family and never replace a country. So you feel sometimes that those are the moments when an immigrant miss being home or miss being with his community. Or
how did Therese connect with her home country afterwards? Like, what did she do to feel that she's serving her country, to feel better about things?
So it took her a lot of time and energy to think about in her case, the 10 years that she spent in the United States. It took her a lot of work on herself to accept that now Therese is a different person in a different place and a different country. And to feel more comfortable with who she is, she will end up creating a language center, because for her it was very important for her kids to learn the language and to explain to the world, and specifically to sandwich, where she comes from. So she'll end up to be happy teaching Arabic.
Do you think the fact that she moved to Sandwich initially, for example, if she had moved to DC or New York or some other big city initially, would it have been easier, or you think it's would have been the same for Therese?
With time, I learned that probably it would have been easier, but some of the things would have been harder, because when you move to a city like DC, Chicago, or somewhere else, the good thing about it is you don't have a lot of difficulties to adapt. I mean, you can meet another Lebanese people, you can end up international community, and even the Americans are really used to be with foreign like citizens. Now, the case when you move to in a small town, you have to adopt a lot and you have to integrate. The good thing about, like in my case or Therese's case, is that you learn more easily the language because you have to. For instance, in my case, I was so I used to speak in French with the waiter. I couldn't even say water correctly, and if I say water, it's like the waiter will look at me like, "What are you saying?" And so I feel that this kind of experience, you don't necessarily have it somewhere where there is a lot of international community already. So the good thing about ending up in a small place or start your life in a smaller city is that you have to adapt, you have to adjust. And the good thing that you end up maybe learning a language or reading a lot because you have a lot of time. So there is a good also in that.
So it's basically what you have, and I think what a lot of immigrants have is I guess nostalgia, right?
That's true.
Yeah, and always I always have this question in my mind: is it like nostalgia to the country itself, or is it just nostalgia to how you grew up in your childhood, to nostalgia, the people who were there. I don't know, what do you think it is? Like, is it just because you grew up there, you're just attached to it?
It's nostalgia to a place where you're not there no more, but to a place also that you feel is disappearing, to experiences and souvenirs that are now from the past, and that you feel you will probably never live again, and your kids won't live, like they are in a very different place than for instance me and in growing up in Lebanon. It's very difficult and it's very different. So I feel that uh, it's nostalgia, but also the feeling that you're losing a part of who you were in the past, and you have to continue living as if life is normal, and adapt and adjust and accept the idea that probably your kids will ever have the same life or same souvenir than yours. And maybe this is not bad, but like for sometimes when you feel this nostalgia, you would like them to live also some of your souvenirs.
Right, right. And yeah, and I think one thing, I mean, if you read the life of immigrants since long time, I mean, people have been immigrating or emigrating from their countries for a very long time, and you can read stories of nostalgia even at these times. And I think it was harder at that time because you weren't able to even communicate with your home country except via maybe letters that take months
Yes.
to get there. But you weren't able. Now you can just go on WhatsApp or FaceTime or whatever and talk to anybody, see some pictures, and so maybe it's easier now, especially with globalization happening. But one thing, I think you're right, and some of us have done it where we decided to move back actually just for that reason, and to give our kids that same experience. But I think at the same time the country is changing. Like, you have nostalgia to a certain place that's no longer there even now because it moved on. It's changing. Maybe in the case of Lebanon for the worse right now. But what do you think of that? I don't know, because there's change there, there's change here, changing everywhere.
That's true. You're right, and I feel that like you yourself, this the experience of coming back, and probably wanting your kids to have the same experiences that you had when you were younger, and I feel that even now things are more difficult and more really harder for the immigrant, because when he sees what is going on in Lebanon, we're not only worried about our souvenirs being souvenirs, but mainly about the country that is not existing at all no more, that we don't recognize at all. Like, and at the same time you feel we're not really guilty, but at the same time we have a lot of attachment and links and ties to where we come from. But in the same time we feel hopeless because we can't really change anything. So I mean, we're in the same time really maintaining the relation with Lebanon, but in the same time, we can't do anything to save the country, despite the fact that we all, as immigrants, want the country to change for the best and come back to what we know it as Lebanon.
I mean, you can do small things, but not necessarily big things that will lead to big changes because we're limited in terms of what we can do. Do you think this is a uniquely Lebanese thing, or have you talked like as I know you've written your book, you've been around, you've discussed it multiple times now. Do you think it also goes to other immigrants from other countries? Do they have the same
Yeah,
feelings?
I think that, and you're right, it's not only to Lebanese, like any immigrant diaspora that is created outside, when you feel that there are sometimes three or four more a number of people living outside than inside the country, then it creates ties between the persons that are outside. But in the same time, always the same problem that keeps coming back, the fact that that's true that we have to start by doing small things, but in the same time not everyone is willing to do the small things. And if we forget about Lebanon, uh, like we can see it now. If we forget about Lebanon is almost dying, and it really needs us to come back to Lebanon as the Lebanon that we know. So I feel that you're right. Uh, It's the story of any immigrant, but in the same time, it is a story of a Lebanon now that is really having a lot of problems in 2021, where we feel as diaspora, uh, the urge, really the importance to help, but at the same time, we can't do anything. We can't do anything. So no, it's particular today to the Lebanese diaspora where we feel helpless.
I think it could. I mean, I haven't. You probably talked to more diaspora than me, but if I think about the Afghani diaspora or the Syrian diaspora or the Yemeni diaspora, I don't know how they're feeling. Have you talked to any of them, like in terms of?
Yeah, and like even like you have a Tunisian diaspora that is very like active in DC. We have there is a Moroccan diaspora. The diasporas in general have many things in common, but in the same time, today the Lebanese diaspora is having really a lot of more not problems, but in the same time we are trying to demonstrate, to show how much things are bad in Lebanon today, and they're not that bad in Morocco or Ethiopia, probably much more in Afghanistan. But I mean, for some diasporas, they're trying to do their best, and when they do their best, they're doing it. But in our case, I don't feel that we have the feeling that we are able to change anything. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are some like members of the Lebanese diaspora that don't feel that hopeless that me. But I feel now that that part of our history is dying, and we're not doing that much to save it.
Back to so Therese, is she still in Sandwich now, or did she move out of Sandwich and go?
So that's a very interesting question, because if I tell you, you're not going to read the book when it will be translated to English. So I'm not going to tell you that. But what I can tell you is that the book's title is in imparfait. It's not in present. C'est Elle habitait à Sandwich. It's in the past. But in the same time, you really have to read the book, because we're not sure if she's leaving Sandwich or not.
Did she adapt at the end? Like, was she able to adapt?
Yes. Yeah. Did she adapt? She's living in the United States, and you have to adapt. One of the good things about being here is that you learn to adapt. You learn to see the good thing about everything. So yeah, she's complaining a lot, but she's going somewhere.
Does she feel that people are accepting in the United States? Like, are they accepting of people coming from outside, or are they resistant to people from the outside, especially in small towns in the Midwest, I guess?
In small towns, they expect the persons or the immigrants to adapt. They're not necessarily willing to accept you of who you are and where you come from. In big cities, this is a different story.
Basically, you have to prove yourself or
Yes.
work hard towards it, but then you're accepted.
But then you're accepted, and not only you're accepted, you're considered as someone bringing something to the society.
I'm going to compare, since we're discussing this right now. Because you've lived in Paris too for a bit, right? Haven't you?
Yes, 4 years.
Right. So if you compare the U.S. to France, do you think there's a difference in acceptance of immigrants between the two countries, or do you think it's pretty much the same? That's a difficult question, I know. Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, but that's a good question. Let's compare. To be fair, let's compare the life in, for instance, DC to the life in Paris. I won't really compare the life in Paris to a life in a small rural place. It is a different story, different expectations, and different things. So let's start by comparing things that can be comparable, two cities. And if you compare like the life in Paris to the life in DC, I feel that there are things in common. I feel that in both cases you will end up finding people that accept immigrant, that consider that immigrant are bringing a lot to the society. And there are some people that consider that we should necessarily be here, but I feel that in DC we are more willing to accept the difference. It's not that in Paris we don't, that's not true, but in the same time I feel that Paris has a lot of there are a lot of things to and a lot of people to adjust. And in here, it's more considered as not easier, but more like welcoming, if I can say that. There is more place for everyone. In Paris, we're so much. There are so many foreigners that I feel that you really have to do a lot to adapt, much more than in DC.
And the question for you is, with your kids, do you think like what do you see as their future? You're raising them in DC right now. Do you think are you raising them as? And I think that's the question that a lot of immigrants have, not just to you. I think, are you raising them as Americans? Are you raising them as French? Are you raising them as Lebanese? Or is it just a combination? Or what do you want for them when they grow up? What do you want them to be?
I want them to be free. I want them to be able to say that they can choose anywhere they want to be. I want them to be happy. If that means that they want to live in Sandwich, I'm very okay with that. I'll go to Sandwich to visit them. If they want to live in Paris, I'm going to Paris to see them. If they want to stay in DC, I want them to be happy. And I really don't care about the city. It's not up to me to decide what they want for their future. What I want them is to be really able to think what works the best for them and where they're the happier. So I really don't want to decide like saying, oh no, they should stay in the United States. It's the best country in the world. Although I do think that. And in the same time, I don't want to tell, oh no, they shouldn't stay here. They should go to Paris. I love Paris, but in the same time, they're Americans too. So I feel that they'll be happy. Naturally, they'll be happy here. They will be happy in Paris because they speak the language. They will be happy in Lebanon because this is where their parents are from. So they could be happy anywhere if they decide to adapt.
I think that's the right thing to say. I think in their age, it's more of a globalized world.
Exactly.
Maybe they have some roots somewhere, but for the most part, I think this generation will be probably living anywhere that works for them. Probably they're going to be better than us at adapting, maybe compared to us.
And we shouldn't spend our time telling them, oh, the life in Lebanon was better, or the life in the United States is better, or the life in France. I think that we have to give them the freedom to decide where they want to be, because we were raised in a way where we had the right to leave our country. And I want to give them that right too. If they feel that they're not happy, then they shouldn't stay. And if they feel that they're happy where they are, so they should stay.
What advice do you have? I mean, now there's a lot of people in Lebanon who are emigrating out to the US, to the Gulf, to Europe, to multiple other places. What advice do you have for these people? Because all of these people are actually basically restarting their lives from scratch. So
my advice is for women especially to never stop working. They shouldn't, if they follow someone by love, and this is great, they shouldn't stop working, because this is very important for them to prove themselves to their family, to themselves, to the society. So the first thing that is very important is that you shouldn't stop working. You shouldn't stop thinking. You shouldn't stop contributing to the society whenever you are. In Dubai, in Saudi Arabia, in the United States, in France, anywhere, you have to start somewhere, but you have to start. You shouldn't say, well, maybe it's my partner, I don't need to work, or maybe, oh, I'm in a situation where, no, we should all start somewhere. Like our kids who go to school in any place they can, we also have to learn to adapt. If we are a woman or someone, a man following a woman, anyone. For me, it always like the happiness is to start somewhere, and to start somewhere you have to keep yourself busy, and not only by being a partner of someone, but mainly by working and proving yourself as someone who works.
You want to prove you're doing something beneficial.
That is, it can be volunteering in a school, it can be volunteering in a bookstore, it can be anything, but you have to spend your time and willing to accept that you are now in a different place.
Your book is Elle habitait, a sandwich, and it's only in French at this point, although you are working on translating it to English, so I can read it myself, right?
That's true, yeah. And then you can read it, and everyone can read it if they want to read it in English, yeah.
It's selling on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Anywhere else or just Amazon at this point?
At this point, Amazon Prime, it's on Prime too. It's on Kindle if someone doesn't like to read the book normally. And it's anywhere where Amazon is, like in Paris, normally in all the bookstores, but in United States for now, in Bonjour Books, it's a library that is close to DC, and in Amazon too.
You can find it at bookstores too,
Yes.
potentially not only on Amazon. And you have a website too, right? Don't you have a website?
Yes, I do have a website. So it's my first name, Pauline, my two last names, mouhannakarroum.com.
Do you have also you have a LinkedIn, but you don't have a Twitter handle, right? Do you?
I have, but I don't really use it, which I regret. I should use it more.
Maybe we'll market it for you and see.
Yes, hopefully. Because I know that you are active on Twitter more.
Thank you, Pauline, for talking to us about your book. And I think hopefully people have learned a bit about what immigrants go through when they come to different countries and how they adapt. I think the biggest thing is that I think humans are able to eventually adapt wherever they go, and that's a very important thing. And especially, I think Lebanese people, just because even life in Lebanon, you probably have to adapt on a daily basis.
Exactly. I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.